Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My former boss, Marcus Blackwell, was an absolute prick, plain and simple. He was the kind of guy who could make you feel like a piece of dirt while acting like he was doing you a favor. His condescending attitude often crossed into straight-up abuse, and he seemed to have a particular issue with all the female employees, treating them like they were too dumb to tie their own shoes. He loved to scream at people over the slightest mistakes, or even when there was no mistake at all. Blackwell was a slave driver who expected everyone to sacrifice their personal lives for the job. The thing that really sparked my revenge was him demanding that I come in and miss my older sister's birthday party, a day I had already requested off months in advance. Nobody liked him. Me and the rest of my team, maybe 10 of us, couldn't stand having Blackwell around anymore. So we followed protocol and started compiling evidence of him ignoring approved time-off requests, using inappropriate and abusive language, and so on. We put it all in a shared Google Doc. That was step 1. Step 2 was getting a nice, juicy incident to cap it all off. We needed Blackwell to blow his top in a major way, so we set a trap. The youngest girl on the team, Emily, bless her heart, volunteered to be the bait. She intentionally made an obvious rookie mistake on some paperwork, something guaranteed to set Blackwell off, and the idiot took the bait hook, line, and sinker. See, he loved to publicly dress people down to set an example and rule through fear, as he put it. This gave the rest of us the perfect chance to film his meltdown from our desks and add that clip to the evidence folder. Here's where it gets good. Our company had this absolutely ancient email system that let any employee send a message to every single person across all departments as long as you had the right department and manager names. And hilariously, they just handed out all that info to us workers, so some clever soul could blast out whatever they wanted to the whole company, all the way up to the CEO. One morning at 10 a.m., prime time for people being at their desks, we created a burner email account and sent that Google folder far and wide with the subject line, Marcus Blackwell Vital Info, Branch Department. It took a little while to hit every division, but we got it out there. Naturally, Blackwell got the email too, and you could practically hear his office explode as people all over started calling to ask what the hell was going on. HR did a quick investigation into the allegations against Blackwell and took severe disciplinary action. From what I heard, he wasn't outright fired, but he resigned shortly after. About a month later, Blackwell was gone, replaced by a new manager who was an a-hole too, just not as bad. Whenever I think about the look on Blackwell's face through that whole crap show, it helps me sleep at night. Dialogue additions. Emily, I need you to make a dumb mistake on these TPS reports, I said in a hushed tone. Something so boneheaded it'll set Blackwell off for sure. She nodded. Got it. I'll misspell documentation as docs you meant a shun or something. Later, as Blackwell raged, veins bulging on his forehead, he screamed, How many times do I have to go over this? It's documentation, not dox you. Aw, forget it. You're an idiot, Emily. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 10 years now and never had any issues with my neighbors. Everyone pretty much kept to themselves, but we're still friendly in passing. That all changed when the house next door to me was sold. The new owner was a guy named Steve who seemed nice enough at first. He came by to introduce himself and we chatted for a bit. Seemed like a normal guy in his 40s who worked in construction. Little did I know the headaches he was about to cause me. It started small at first. I'd notice his big beat-up truck parked halfway in front of my driveway. Annoying for sure, but no big deal. I just asked him to move it and he did. Then he started leaving it there overnight, which meant I had to bang on his door at 6 a.m. when I left for work. He'd stumble out half asleep and move it while scowling at me like it was my fault. After a few days of this, I kindly asked him if he could please not block my driveway at night. Well, that must have set something off because the very next night he moved his truck and parked it completely in front of my driveway. I was stunned. Was he really doing this on purpose now? I knocked loudly on his door and he took forever to answer. When he finally did, I told him he needed to move his truck immediately. He got a smug look on his face. Fine, if that's how he wanted to play it. I took pictures of his truck blocking my driveway and called the city to file a complaint. A few days later, I got a letter saying they spoke to him about it and that blocking driveways was against city ordinance. Ha! Victory was mine, or so I thought. The very next morning, I opened my door to find his big truck parked horizontally across the bottom portion of my driveway. He had carefully positioned it so the back tires were just shy of the property line. Tricky bastard. Since it wasn't fully blocking my driveway, the city said it wasn't against code for him to park there. I was furious. Steve continued this little game for weeks. He would park his truck in different spots that just infringed on my driveway enough to be a nuisance, but not enough to warrant another citation. By now, tensions were high between us. We had screaming arguments over it frequently, especially when I had to be somewhere and needed him to move his damn truck. One time, I didn't notice he had parked it at an angle until I tried backing out and heard a nasty scraping sound. His rear bumper had dented and scraped up my garage door. When I confronted him, Steve said if I had damage that it was my own fault. He point blank refused to pay for the repairs, and things nearly got physical that day. I'd had enough. I wasn't going to play his stupid games any longer. After consulting with a lawyer friend, I decided to erect a fence on the property line at the edge of my driveway. This would make it impossible for him to continue blocking me. The look on Steve's face as the fence post went up was priceless. He came storming over, red-faced and screaming at us to stop. My lawyer buddy cut him off and informed Steve he was well within his rights to put up a fence on his own property. Steve got right up in my face and threatened to tear the fence down if I blocked his parking spots. I held my cool and told him to go right ahead. Not only would he be destroying my property, but he'd also be violating the restraining order I was having my lawyer file against him. Well, unfortunately, my fence only solved half the problem. Now Steve took to parking his ominous, noisy work trucks along the street at all hours. He'd leave them idling just to torment me. Again, not technically illegal, but a definite nuisance. The final straw came when I woke up to backup alarms and grinding metal outside my house at 3 a.m. There was Steve, fully dressed, having some work done on his box truck while it was parked in front of my bedroom window. I called the police to report the noise violation. By the time they came, he had finished his little revenge project, but the cops gave him a warning about doing automotive work with loud tools at night. As they were leaving, I overheard one say to Steve, "Seems like you two have some issues to work out." Issues to work out? That ship had sailed long ago. It was time to let the court settle this mess once and for all. I filed a lawsuit against Steve for harassment, property damage, and emotional distress. My lawyer and I gathered up all the photos, police reports, and other documentation of Steve's ongoing parking antics. We presented a rock-solid case of him maliciously blocking access to my own driveway. When asked why he did it, Steve muttered something about me disrespecting him but couldn't give any actual reason. The judge was not impressed by his excuses. He ruled in my favor, saying Steve was clearly harassing me and needed to cease immediately. He was ordered to pay to repair my garage door and also to permanently remove any obstruction that blocked any part of my driveway. Sweet justice. I gladly paid the fence company extra to come back out the same day the ruling was made. Steve stood there slack-jawed and fuming as they installed heavy-duty posts right along the edge of the driveway. A nice big fence gate even went up to block the remaining few feet he used to park in. My driveway was finally free and clear. My smugness quickly faded, though, when I saw Steve's truck was now fully parked across my fence gate. I immediately called to have it towed for obstruction just to drive home the point that things had changed. That court order must have finally knocked some sense into Steve because he hasn't tried anything since. We still exchange bitter glances, but at least I can freely access my driveway again. The whole ordeal was such a headache, but I'm satisfied knowing the law protected my rights in the end. I also learned not to take friendly neighbors for granted ever again. You just never know when one will turn into an entitled jerk. The next one is a petty revenge story. This was back in 2016, and I'd started going out with a really good-looking girl who was a bit younger than me. We were at a restaurant bar once, waiting for a table and having cocktails. I ordered a gin and tonic, and I must admit it looked a bit over the top. Bartender dude wanted to impress and put a lot of fancy things in the drink. You know, like the floating little flower, some pink peppercorns. New girlfriend says, "Are you really gonna drink that? It looks very gay for a man." I hate homophobes and was kind of shocked, and I know I should have just broken up with her right there, but she looked so good, I thought I could teach her a lesson. She went to the toilet and I told the bartender, "Man, I'm gonna order something real simple, but you gotta fancy it the duck up to make it look as rainbowy as possible." So when she got back from the toilet, I ordered a screwdriver, and bartender dude properly delivered. He gave me a screwdriver with a ducking peacock and half a rainforest coming out of it. New girlfriend wasn't impressed. So next day I ordered a bunch of mini cocktail umbrellas online, and I always kept a few in my pocket whenever I'd go out with her. Shot of Jägermeister? I managed to stick an umbrella there. Bottle of beer, mini umbrella in it. I put so many mini umbrellas in all sorts of non-umbrella friendly drinks. I must still have some photos somewhere. She always looked kinda embarrassed about me drinking those. I ended up breaking up with her a few months later. I met her back in January, and she's now deeply religious, and I think I dodged a bullet there. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Been working at this job for some years when I got a new manager. A month or so into her working there, she came into my office and told me I wasn't allowed to work overtime anymore, and if I have any issues, we can discuss it. The way she said it sounded like she was expecting this to really hurt me. I sent an email to confirm the conversation we had, and her response basically said, "Correct, no more time theft." I didn't really like that accusation. I usually stayed a little late by 30 minutes at most to finish up projects. A lot of projects come in last minute, and other managers were thankful for my help, so I quit staying to finish projects and wouldn't start a new one if there wasn't enough time. No real issues, but some projects started falling through the cracks. I let the other managers know my manager told me no more overtime and I'm just following orders. Fast forward barely a month later. As I'm leaving for the day, she rushes to me asking if I can work on, you guessed it, a last-minute project. It's potentially worth millions. I explained how I've got plans and I'm not about to be a thief. Next day was too quiet. In the afternoon, I get a request to have a meeting with my manager and HR. Usually you get a written complaint beforehand, so I'm still a little off guard. I could at least be a little prepared. At the meeting, my manager reads off grievances like it's an intervention. She frames it like I have antisocial behavioral issues, insubordinate, and I don't go the extra mile. If you let her keep going, I wouldn't be surprised if I was somehow to blame for the company not reaching its goals. When she finally finished, she had to have started writing that the night before and into the next day. I asked if it's okay if I had my say. I pointed out a lot was just her opinion, and I'm overall well-liked. I always do exactly what she says. However, my manager likes to constantly move projects around while I'm working on them, and I'm not allowed overtime. She denies ever saying this, so I forward the email to HR. My manager then starts backtracking. She didn't mean it permanently. HR takes me off the call a bit. When they come back, it's just HR. And I start by saying I'm not signing anything. They tell me let's agree to disagree. This has been one big miscommunication and they appreciate all the work I do. I asked to confirm if this was going to be held against me in any way and they said no. They went on to say if I can stay late sometimes, great, but it's also okay that I leave after my 8 hours. My manager later quit in less than a year. The next one is an entitled people story. I told him that his serial cheating made me suffer from post-infidelity stress disorder. We broke up because he'd been visiting Essex workers but stayed friends and co-run our project. I wanted his apology to help myself heal. Instead, he called me a drama queen and my panic attacks overreactions, told work partners that I'm crazy, then blocked me on all chat platforms. Of course, he also blamed me for killing his SX drive, forcing him to get help from other women. I need help getting over this pain. Ironically, on the day he confessed that he'd been visiting Essex workers, I ended up comforting him, trying to minimize his guilt because I didn't want to hurt him. I kept reassuring him that he's still a good person who's just suffering from ASD, bipolar, and Essex addiction. After our breakup, I saved him from his suicide attempt due to his family crisis, looked after him at his place when he was depressed, and gave his parents emotional support like I used to. He said he could never find another girl like me, not wanting to cause another suicidal attempt. I stayed silent about the post-infidelity triggers and ruminations I faced daily. Fast forward to now. His devaluation of me began last month during his manic episode. After making reckless business decisions and burning bridges with our partners, he apologized to teammates saying I gave him stress which caused his meltdown. Blame shifting. That was my last straw. Why, out of everyone on earth, did you choose to hurt me again? Unlike my usual self, I demanded his apology, which ignited his fury. He gave me the most heartless revenge ever, by inviting his former SX partner to our work event. I made it clear when we decided to continue our work after the breakup that I didn't want anyone whom he slept with involved in our project, given his promiscuity had already affected me. My PTSD symptoms were triggered immediately. Rumination, anxiety, and nightmares. I know I will break down if I see her. At that time, I still wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. Had he known how serious my PTSD was, he would not have invited her to our event. So I texted him to explain my PTSD symptoms from his infidelity and begged him not to invite the girl. And then next is what I described in my first paragraph. The next one is an entitled parent story. On my mom's birthday, and we ate at a very nice restaurant. My family, friends, and my girlfriend all sat together at a round table. My dad's favorite topics are how I, the oldest son, used to get in trouble. To be fair, quite a few of the stories he tells are very funny. One in particular, however, always rubs me the wrong way, as it's the only story he doesn't tell in full. He gets his laughs. It ticks me off. My girlfriend noticed I'm upset, and when we're on the way home, she asked why. I didn't expect it, bring back some emotions I didn't know I still had. All throughout my school years, I was physically punished, whipped, and publicly humiliated. Dad didn't like the term beating because he didn't hit me with a closed fist or leave me bloody, but no matter what new name he gave it, it felt like a beating. To this day, I think I deserved almost every beating, because I was, some would say that I still am, a troublemaker. However, there was one time that was especially bad that I don't think I deserved. When I was in elementary school, I did something really bad. I called my teacher a witch. Was almost home free too, but she eavesdropped on me talking with my friend on the way to the bus. Of course, as an adult, I now know it was wrong, and I was just lashing out to lash out. She did nothing wrong and was a sweet teacher, even if she was rude and gave me an F for not showing my work even though I was right. Teacher reasonably calls my dad, who is upset with me. This time, however, was really bad because he just had his own bad day. He took out his belt like he normally does and whipped my butt blue and a little bloody. Worst whipping of my life. He made me write a letter to my teacher and I thought that'd be it. But then it got worse. I couldn't sit down. For 3 classes, I was unable to sit in my chair, and if I did, I'd cry. It hurt too much. My third teacher, the teacher I called a witch, saw that I was in pain, asked why I couldn't sit down, and I told her that it's because my dad whipped me. During lunch, one of my teachers took me to the front office to meet with these 2 guys I've never seen before. My first 3 teachers were also there, as well as the principal. They took me to this back room and asked me a lot of questions. I told them honestly what happened and how often I get whipped, which was often because I like to talk back at my parents. They had me pull down my pants a bit, and I still to this day remember someone in the room gasping. They took pictures and said it was going to be okay. I didn't tell my parents because I was scared about being whipped again. The next night, CPS came to my house, threatened to take me and my siblings. Dad and Mom assured them that everything was okay and that it wouldn't happen again. A lapse, I believe, is what was said. Dad blamed me for weeks about how embarrassed he was. Couldn't look at me. It soon became a dig at me, he'd say from time to time, and evolved to a funny story about how I almost got taken by CPS. Gets quite a bit of laughs, and he tells it often. Troublemaking son over-exaggerated a butt whipping. Some good did come from it, though. He never whipped me or my siblings that hard again. It got to the point that he'd just ground us and take our doors off their hinges instead of hitting. Youngest 2 siblings never even got to see his belt unless he was showing it off as the only way to keep me in check. Reality is that it didn't actually work, and I continued to cause trouble up until I graduated. My GF is utterly upset now that she has the context. Says I need to tell him off, which I would if I were a bit more younger. Obviously, I still care, but I just don't have the same fight in me like I used to. I just make sure the right people know the real story. I'm still upset about it all, which is why I'm posting this. Feels good airing out this stuff. The next one is an entitled parent's story. Me, 16F, and my mother, 47F, haven't ever had the best relationship. We get along. I talk to her if I have to, but otherwise I really don't think she likes me at all. I have almost no memory of my childhood, so I can't be certain of how my mother treated me then. But as long as I can remember, from about 10 years old, I'm now 16, I've had the feeling that she despises me. First of all, I don't remember her ever talking to me in a loving, caring, or overall nice, normal voice. It's always been annoyance and frustration in her voice even when seeing me. Especially ever since I've been diagnosed with depression. I was diagnosed at 13. She doesn't really care or believe anything I say about how fatigued I am or how bad my mental health at the time is. She also never has said anything nice to or about me. It's always complaints and subtle insults blaming me for whatever she feels like. She dumps our money struggles at my face, and yeah, it's good to know after all I am 16, but I feel guilty asking for shampoo because she gets mad every time I need anything. I've studied psychology a few years and in my free time, but obviously I'm not a psychologist or anywhere near that. However, I've noticed that I have absolutely no faith in myself and no self-respect. I've always been beaten down over the smallest mistakes, and now I'm absolutely petrified to do anything in case I make a mistake. I've gone so far that I have to constantly remind myself to write I in capital, because I believe I'm not worthy of a capital letter. I don't know if I'm dramatic or is she manipulative, but anytime someone else is in her presence, she'll be oh so lovely and chit-chat away, but as soon as no one's hearing, she's yelling at me or sighing her displeasure. Because of this, my friends have never seen her act like that, so they don't believe me at all and say that I should talk to her or just not be so sensitive. And yes, I've tried talking to her, but she turns it against me as my fault, and I'm just too tired to argue back and forth. In the future, I'm hoping to move in with my boyfriend, the absolute light of my life, and possibly cutting her out or talking to her only when necessary. Please help, I feel like an ass. The next one is an entitled parent's story. I just want to vent. I've been with my husband about 15 years, and we were very LC with his family for most of it because he couldn't stand them. I probably only met his mom 4 times even though we lived in the same city. Well, 2 years ago, we get a call from Adult Protective Services. She was in the hospital after calling cop, and when they'd gone to get her, the apartment she shared with her daughter, who is also an entitled piece of crap, a whole other story, was in such bad condition that they didn't want to release her back there. I'm sure they were happy to find someone else to take her, so we almost didn't even question whether there were other options, and we agreed to take her. We moved her in. It's been a nightmare. She's very entitled and narcissistic. She doesn't have much income because she hardly ever worked, so it's pretty measly Social Security. She spends about half her monthly income on cigarettes. We so love smelling it all the time. She does smoke outside, luckily. When we first got her and she was pretty frail and it was winter, we let her smoke in the garage, which was a huge mistake and turned into a giant tantrum when we finally put a stop to it. Lucky for her, she gets Medicare fully paid for by the state and gets some food stamps, but we don't charge her anything. She's a total slob, has probably taken 5, 6 showers in 2 years, and we really resent having her here now. She never cleans after herself, makes noise constantly, and frequently acts like a child and throws tantrums. For instance, she ran out of a chocolate muffin she likes but still had cake and other snacks. She huffed and slammed the pantry and said, "I guess I'll just have to go without," as usual. We make sure she gets all her meds, gets food even if her food stamps run out, and drive her to all medical appointments. Some are 90 miles away and take 4 hours. But yeah, she goes without. I wish we'd tried to find an alternative earlier, but we finally are trying. Today I took her to meet with a social worker about Section 8 housing. She made it off the waiting list, and we're waiting to see how much she might get and whether we can find her a studio or something. The lady explained that she would have to pay 30-40% of her income toward the rent. Meal started idioting about it immediately, how they were going to take all her money. I'm just sitting here like, idiot, you live in my house for free. Why shouldn't you have to pay something toward your own basic needs such as housing? What the duck? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.